Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, affectionately known as the Mayor of Houndstown, USA. Thank you for joining us. I want you to subscribe, watch this show, watch it live, 8 o'clock Monday nights, Facebook, Dish on Dogs. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm cheating. I'm looking down at my notes because I don't know the first
You got
thing
yelled
about
at because you didn't introduce the show properly, right?
I get yelled at all the time. Today's no different, so I'm good at it. I've been doing it a long time. Joining me, as you just heard somebody pipe in there, or I haven't introduced, the very lovely Jackie Bondanza, the president of Houndstown, USA, home to the happiest dogs on earth. So make sure you listen and subscribe. There is, maybe this show doesn't, we have a library of podcasts of everything you've ever wanted to know about dogs, at least in our opinion. And our opinion is based on caring for 2 million dogs.
Yeah,
2 million.
I know. The number really creeps up every year. We, increase it incrementally, obviously, because our system is growing so much and the number of dogs that are coming into it, we just have so many visitors coming in. So 2 million over 20 years. We know a thing or two about dogs.
Right. And it's not an exact science. And anybody that tells you human psychology, if anybody tells you a psychiatrist, psychologist can tell you definitively about the human brain, they're lying to you. So I like to say now we're at the point, I think we got 20 locations and how many, 14? Tell me about that. Update me on that, Jackie. How many places, how many Houndstowns are there?
You really don't know. You're not. This is not just a prompting question, by the way. He really isn't that sure. No. So we have 14 locations that are open and operating right now, and then we've got a really exciting next couple months coming up. So we have Nashville opening soon. We have Space Coast opening soon, and our Henderson, Nevada, and Gaithersburg, Maryland, and Stone Mountain, Georgia. So we'll be at probably 18 or 19 by the end of 2020. And then we've got another 15 stores that are opening probably next year.
Right. So the reason I brought that up, obviously, is not to say that I mean, that's nice, but to understand our experience and knowledge in the pet care space. There's a reason that people are gravitating towards Houndstown, both customers and franchisees, investors. Everybody's gravitating towards Houndstown. So when we say about 2 million dogs, that number is growing exponentially. I think on any given day, we're taking care of probably today in our system 500 dogs.
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah, I would say it's probably closer to 1,200.
1,200?
1,200, yeah.
Holy smokes, Jackie. So just think of that. Just think of that. I'm not saying we're watching 1,200 dogs today, but our system, our franchisees are taking care of 1,000 dogs today. Today is not not a special day. It's not a holiday, although we're going to talk about the holidays. This is just another day of the week. And our franchisees, who are tremendous sponges of knowledge, right? So they came to our training. They didn't tell us how they think they should run a business. We told them how we think they should run a business. And we didn't put a gun to their head to do that, right? They voluntarily did that. So, meaning, we had an episode where I talked to Danielle, our one of our trainers. We were talking about people that want to absorb knowledge, and then there's people that want to tell us about their knowledge. And in franchising,
well, that's something we're constantly kind of battling in the dog world as well, right? Because the dog world is unregulated to some degree. Right. And we're always challenged with, and this is going to lead into what we're going to talk about today, and holidays and adopting dogs during the holidays, and what can we do to make that experience better for both the human and the dog. But everybody thinks they know better when it comes to dog management, and there are so many different training techniques and theories and philosophies out there.
Yes. And I think it's a human condition, right? Everybody thinks they know better than. We had a great meeting last night, and we talk about everybody thinks they know more than. I think I know more than you. You probably think you know more than me, and that's our human brain going. So that's human nature. So then we talk about, but let me not go all over the place. I had about 18 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
and
Let's focus here.
I have to take a breath. I want to talk about the holidays. I want to talk about holiday puppies. What we call them Christmas puppies. We used to call them Christmas puppies. That means puppies that were adopted around Christmas time to put under the Christmas tree or the Hanukkah candle, the menorah. We get Christmas puppies. We usually motivated by like a 10-year-old child or a 5-year-old child, and people go out and they get a puppy for their 5 or 10-year-old child for family pet. And then in March or April, they want to bring it to the shelter because they mismanaged the dog. They misunderstood the responsibilities of taking it, the responsibilities, the expense. So we talk about the Christmas puppies. But here, we're pre-holiday, meaning we're approaching Thanksgiving and Christmas. Let's talk about what COVID-19, for those of you who had never heard of that, COVID-19, it's kind of upset the balance of our society in many ways. How did it affect dogs?
You mean in our business or
in society?
So, well, I think looking back on it now, the COVID pandemic, obviously overnight everybody moved from working out of the home for the most part to being home all the time. That changed the dynamic of the day for the dog in a big, big way, right? So it's difficult for dogs to adapt to this new routine of just everybody now being in the house. So we started to hear some responses and feedback from our customers that had started coming back in to use us for daycare after that first, month or so that everything was kind of chaotic. And they were saying things like, well, my dog's acting a little funny now. Like, he needs to really get out of the house, or his routine got broken, and they're noticing different behavior issues that are going on in the home. So, dogs' routines were very highly upset when everybody when the humans changed their routines. Right.
So there's certain ironies to this whole thing. We are denning animals, humans, right? And dogs are social pack animals. So there was this big, great thing that happened when COVID first began in March. The shelters were literally emptied out by people wanting a dog. They're home. This is their opportunity to be home, take care of a dog, and they romance this dog laying by the fireplace. The pet owner is going to be reading a book, and the kids are going to be. So this was this romantic idea, and this is what happens many times in pet adoption. They have this idea. Then they find out after the first month, the dog needs an outlet for its energy. It doesn't want to be locked in your apartment or your house. He's inserted himself in the pack. And that's what dogs do. They insert themselves in a pack. Nature requires that. So now the first week they are probably that nice little pet. You go throw a ball in the backyard, and you have this funny thing. Then all of a sudden, this dog starts barking at the mailman. Or he's developing behaviors that you weren't expecting.
Right.
And then you want to get rid of them. So now...
Well, I think there's a lot of steps in between that. Right. So I think what I've seen from our customers coming into the stores is when you don't, and this is what we're going to talk a little bit about, the education gap that's not being filled properly by either shelters or breeders that dictates what a puppy or a dog actually needs, right? Beyond that first week, beyond the leash, the collar, the bowl, the bed, all of that. We've always talked about this for 20 years. There's the education gap that's related to the how to understand what a dog actually needs day to day, psychologically, physically, routine wise, how to set boundaries and structure in your home so that the dog understands his place in the pack from day one. And that's a mistake that we see everybody make. And it's not a bad mistake. And a lot of times it's very fixable. But it requires a recognition that the part of the responsibility of a pet owner is understanding what a dog actually needs. So a dog is not in the home just to satisfy you and your 10-year-old child. The dog is a living creature that needs its needs met as well, right? Yes. So we have to consider, it's like adopting a child. It's not just about you. It's about what does the child need coming into the home. So it's the same for the dog. what are the dog's needs? They might not match up with what your expectation was.
Yes, Jackie. So as part of our business, we have Houndstown Charities, and as you well know, I do a lot of interaction with the shelters. And frankly, for the last 3 or 4 months, there was no interaction because there was no behavioral problems with dogs coming in. Now there are. I'm getting the phone calls are starting to come in from pet owners, from shelters. They're having these difficulties with dogs. But as you quite correctly said, this is an emotional, most people when it comes to dogs only, it's an impulsive emotional decision based on very few facts. If you were going to buy a car, if you were going to buy a new computer, a new camera, you would do research and you would understand the expenses, how much maintenance involves in your new air conditioning or whatever it is. You would go in depth researching this. With dogs, we just want to meet our immediate family needs, and we make this. And in fairness to the folks listening, certain rescue groups kind of what's the word? They kind of
accentuate that narrative, I think.
They exploit you by exploiting your emotions. So they obviously their agenda is, and again, they just want to save dogs. They want dogs out of their shelters or out of their rescue groups. And not all. Some of them are very good, and they won't allow people. The good shelters, the good rescue groups, don't allow people to make impulsive decisions.
Yeah.
But they're few and far between. So they take a dog that they may already know. I see it all the time, so I'm not making this up. In fact, just this week, I had a situation where we had a little dog, beautiful dog, a small dog. So small dogs are what we call eternal infants because they never grow up. But this dog was such a behavioral problem. He became so aggressive and so disruptive to the family. It puts strain on everybody. Now they have to do something with this 5-year-old dog who's turned into a nightmare for them. And they allowed it to get to that point. And now their frustration, there's a lot of tears, there's a lot of crying. What am I going to do with this dog? And they have tough decisions to make, quite frankly, or what to do. It can't go back to a shelter if it just bit 5 people. Even though it's a little dog, it still bites people. So again, this is by no fault of the dog. So the shelter pushed this particular rescue group, pushed this dog out, and now there's this big emotional tragedy right before the holidays. The whole family is upset.
Right, and
tears.
who loses the most is the dog, obviously. So allowing something to go for 5 years when you know there's an issue with the dog, that's like kind of step number 1 to making sure that you address the dog's needs in your home, especially if you're considering adopting a dog for the holidays. Know what you're getting yourself into. Right. The dog is going to require a lot, and you have to be committed to providing that. And it's not just the best bowl, the best bed, the best this and that. And obviously we promote part of that, a big part of that routine as interactive daycare. It's amazing and incredible what regular interactive daycare in a pack environment can do for a social pack animal. Right. It helps minimize a lot of the behaviors that you see in the home: destructive chewing, separation anxiety, dominance even sometimes. So it's like sending children to kindergarten. It's totally necessary for dogs to have this routine. So when we saw the routine broken when COVID hit, that's when the dogs got all out of balance because their routine got taken away from them by no fault of the owners. But it's time to get back. It's time to get back into our routines. It's time to give our dogs the space they deserve and get them back to their routines as well.
Yep, absolutely. So there's a consistent theme. When I talk to people who are honest, they'll say, I gave away my house to the dogs. I spoiled the shit out of them, and they've taken over my house. And that's the honest truth. That is what happened. Because if the dog was good for the first 2 weeks, it should be good for the next 10 years. So something transpired during what we call this honeymoon phase of the dog and human relationship. And what happened was dogs come to a home, a pack of humans, and as I said earlier, required by nature, not me, not my idea, to insert themselves somewhere in the pack, whether that is in between the children and the adults or between 2 adults. This is not uncommon. It happens all the time. So we'll hear it over and over again. My dog listens to my husband more than me. And there's a reason for that. It's not a bias. It's not a conscious bias of the dog. The whoever's more of a nurturing person, who's feeding the dog, loving the dog, that is the person that the dog may dominate. So what we talk about, as you said, Houndstown, it's not just a nice thing for humans to do. We allow dogs to be dogs, and that's essential. The irony is when dogs come here, many times the pet owners, they do it kind of out of absolute need. They got to get the dog out of their house because it's barking at the reasons they took the dog is out the window, right? They want to relax, they want to work, and they want a dog lying at their feet. Now the dog is creating such havoc in the house, they come to us out of necessity, not a luxury. And again, the irony is that the dog, it comes to our playrooms, we put them in a pack, and they're perfectly fine. And the people are shocked. They're like, that's my dog?
Right, because that's what the dog needs. The dog is at home kind of just like pent up with energy, and he has other needs that need to be met that can't be met by humans. So some part of his life has to involve other dogs. And when people offer that to their dogs, they see that the relationship with their dog is much better. So let's talk about dog adoptions during the holidays. What are some things that people can do to make sure that they're adopting the right dog and they're getting through the honeymoon phase more successfully? So we prevent people from, adopting a dog that might not be right for them, or having to feel like they need to return the dog, because that's not a nice feeling,
Well, it's not good for the dog,
right? And it's not good for the family either. I mean,
it's emotional.
It's an emotional problem, especially if you have children. So talk a little bit about what are some things that people can do to avoid that.
The first thing you should do is question, do you really want a dog?
Yeah.
Any dog, whether it's a 10-pound dog or a 110-pound dog. And what does that mean? Okay, you're going on vacation. You want to go to Disney World? What are you doing with the dog? Okay, there's 3 feet of snow outside. You got to exercise your dog. He has to get outside to relieve himself. The dog is sick. Okay, he's got some genetic problem, hip dysplasia. Okay, it needs ACL surgery. Okay, a couple of $1,000s for that.
Right.
And that's, are you willing to do that? So again, don't romanticize something that we see on TV or your next door neighbor's dog, or most importantly, the dog you had as a child.
That's very common, right? I think it's because the idea of romanticizing being a dog owner, that is, I think, a very common mistake, right? Like, because, and I see it a lot. We see it a lot with families, with young kids that want to adopt a dog for the kids. And then what happens is the novelty wears off for the children. And then usually one of the parents, usually the mom, is the one that ends up taking care of now not only the children and the husband and everything else, but now the dog. Right. And then the dog becomes somewhat of a resentment, of course, in to some members of the family.
Well, and I obviously deal with extreme problems. So I don't deal with the little problems. I deal with the crying, the people, as you just said. The intention was good, always good. People are very well intentioned. Now the house is in such upheaval. The children are not picking up the dog poop. The furniture is chewed, and this Norman Rockwell moment of sitting by the fireplace reading a book is it's opposite of that.
Right,
so there's a lot of tears. There's a lot of emotions. Ultimately, as you said, the family suffers, particularly the kids. Adults, frankly, I don't really care about what happens to you mentally. But the kids, that's a big problem, right? So now you got to lie to them, tell them the dog's going to the farm, the farm. You know how many dogs I had go to the farm? Now I realize as an adult. Because my parents did the same thing. They got a dog impulsively without thinking it out, and they mismanaged it. And then, the family suffers. But anyway, all right, So
step number 1 is to ask yourself, do you really want a dog? Do you want to make the financial, emotional, and every other commitment that needs to be made for a dog for potentially 10 or 12 or 13 years? Number 2, never get a dog and expect a child, anybody under the age of probably 25, to be responsible for that dog. It's actually unfair, especially obviously to small children. So you have to know that, like you said, if you live in an apartment or apartment complex, and you've got 3 small kids and you're both spouses are going to work during the day, you're most likely going to be the one walking that dog at 6:00 in the morning in the snow.
Right.
So the reality of dog ownership is much different than how our brains kind of think about and fantasize about what that actually is.
So again, my brain or my emotions always go towards the kids and the dogs, actually. So you're doing this, and I hear you're going to teach a child responsibilities. It's 10 years old. Now you're setting up a family dynamic where you're yelling at the kids, you're yelling at each other, and the dog is a victim. It's a hostage in your home that you've created. And now, again, the kids, this is not a child. It's not a toy. This is an adult problem with adult responsibilities, just like your car. You don't tell your kid, give the keys to the car and tell them to go get an oil change, because that would be idiotic. But we do that with dogs every day. And then people, again, lack self-awareness. So now they blame the kids. They're screaming at the kids because now what do they say? Well, you said at Christmas you were going to walk the dog.
Right, but kids don't have the ability to make that commitment.
Of
so,
course not.
And a dog obviously should never be used as a bribe, or if you get an A in psychology class, you get a dog. Right. Those types, when we see those types of deals made in families, those are the families that come to us with problems, right? Because the dog being involved in the family actually disrupts the dynamic and makes it worse. Right. It's so I'd say the third thing is to make sure that you do research, like you said. Don't just go to the shelter and pick out the cutest dog or the one that wags its tail the most. Right. You have to take time to ask the shelter, the breeder, the rescue, just the history of the dog. How does the dog interact with other dogs? How's the dog on a leash? Right. Spend time with the dog. Ask if you can foster the dog. Right. That's even better. Idea. We skip this step a lot, but fostering allows you to see what the dog is like in your home and to have a trial period to see, is the dog good for my family? And is my family good for this dog?
Right. Excellent. So, yeah. And some dogs are just easy, frankly. It's not. So as I said, we're dealing with the dramatic situations where dogs have to, end up in shelters and there's this turmoil. Kid gets bit, blah, 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 all of that. By and large, there's many, many wonderful dogs in shelters. We start out kind of being Debbie Downey holiday Grinches, but there are ways, as Jackie said, foster. Don't make this big commitment. And if you feel that people, shelters or rescues are misrepresenting the dog and pushing a dog on you, it's nice to foster. When we talked about earlier, it's a big commitment. It is and it isn't, because dog management behavior, of course, there's expenses. You can't get away from the financial expenses. But we talk about three things with dogs always: leadership, consistency, and boundaries. Leadership, consistency, and boundaries. If you apply those three things, it doesn't mean your children have to go to dog training school, you don't have to do any of those things. But when the dog comes home, set boundaries. What does that mean? You don't have to tie the dog up. You don't have to scream at it. Don't let it at the couch. Don't let it beg at the table. Don't let it in your bed. If you do those things, you will reap what you sow. Trust me. And it happens all the time. It seems nice to have the dog in bed with you, but wait a year. Maybe in a year from now, you invite the dog into the bed or on the couch. So I'm not saying you got to block them outside. Consistency, leadership, and boundaries. Don't you agree, Jackie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the best thing. Once you identify a dog that you think will work best for your family, whether you fostered the dog or adopted him straight from a shelter, or rescue, or gotten him from a breeder, start setting boundaries and providing structure and consistency from day one. What does that look like? In our world, that looks like we use a den, which is a crate. We set up a safe space for a dog. Dogs are denning animals. It's like a bedroom for a human, right? So they need to have a crate. They eat all their meals and their treats in their den. It's a great way to manage the dog when there's company over, when things are too chaotic in your house, when the doorbell rings. It's a management tool that the dog is comfortable with, and it's intuitive to the dog. So that's like probably the number one thing that I would say is the best way to implement that structure and boundaries message from day one.
Right. Absolutely. So again, it's not that difficult. The human brain starts to do too much. You don't have to. You just have to set those boundaries. And I think if you listen to this podcast, by the way, and when we're going to explain how you actually do that, because I really don't know, but Jackie is going to describe that. But more importantly, and I say that because we answer all those questions. So when I say when you say leadership, boundaries, and consistency, we've talked about this many times. Our book coming out, The Dish on Dogs, is going to walk through this paragraph by paragraph by paragraph, how to make pet ownership easy. It's supposed to relax you. It's not supposed to give you anxiety. It's not supposed to, you got to take a home equity loan out to care for the dog. It's simple if you allow it to be. Yep. The great Supreme Court Justice William Rehnquist said, I did nothing, but I did it very well. And that is an inspiring statement, because you can do that with your dog. People, our brain has us, they're crazy. People are buying harnesses and this and chains, and they're throwing pennies at their dog. They're blowing air horns at their dog.
Right. If you just let the dog be in a relaxed way, it's amazing what the symbiotic relationship.
Symbiotic, yes. Yeah, so
we gotta go.
Okay, give me a second, please. I mean,
we're gonna run out of airspace here.
We're gonna run out of tape, right? The film. How much film is left? All right, we're running out of film. All right, Jackie, I won't go babble on. As I said, I've had 18 cups of coffee. Thank you. We know about the dog brain. You know about the Dish on Dogs. You watch this live on Facebook.
Yes, we are Facebook Live every Monday at 8 p.m.
Right. And then also, I know my friend Tom Sullivan, who I did speak negatively about, was this episode. He's a very nice man. Smart, I wouldn't say. But he's a very nice man. He's Beverly Hills. But he watches it on his iPhone when he goes to work every day. How does that happen?
Right. So you can find us on Spotify and iTunes as well. I'm assuming he tunes in. He's got the app on his phone. So
he's got the
app.
You
can also listen to the episodes as it's convenient for you.
Right. So it's older folks. I'm not on Facebook, right? I stay far away from that. But I do like to listen to certain things.
Yeah.
So
and of course you can find us on YouTube. So we have a YouTube channel, Houndstown USA, and the Dish on Dogs is a channel within that channel.
Right. And on our YouTube channel,
production's yelling at me that's wrong.
Right. But there's a lot of content. We make the pet ownership simple, particularly by coming to a Houndstown. You know, it costs a few bucks, but incorporate that into your budget, just like you do your child's soccer games and all this other crazy stuff we do. Incorporate a day or 2 or 3 at Houndstown, particularly in the winter when you don't want to deal with this. And
Yep. So we're here for you when you need us. So keep those 5 tips in mind for those Christmas puppies, and let's make everybody's holiday season and the dogs that are going to get adopted, let's make them permanent members of the home.
Right. Tip of the day. Foster first. First. Don't let people exploit you into taking a dog that's going to really create problems for yourself. Happy holidays.
All right. We'll see everybody next week.
Yes.